Tom Curran's Patriots Talk Podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Tom Curran's Patriots Talk Podcast. I don't have what's known in the biz as an IFB. That's an internal feedback bureaucracy, or the thing that goes in your ear to let you know when the producers are telling you to go ahead. Phil has his because he came prepared. I didn't. Be that as it may, welcome in to the first day of padded training camp 2025. It got for real. The news of the day, Christian Gonzalez had to leave practice with some type of a leg malady after defending Stephon Diggs on one of the first 11-on-11 snaps. We're going to get to that and the fallout from that. But Phil, big time red zone and running game day as Patriots put on their pots and their shoulder pads and got after.
Yeah, they sure did. A lot of physicality, as you might expect. Some good hard running, I thought, from all three of the top Patriots running backs, Ramondre Stevenson, Antonio Gibson, and the rookie, Travion Henderson. I thought the offensive line, Tom, actually held its own. This is a defense that we think will be very good, but I thought they did a pretty good job of clearing space and allowing those runners to get to the second level. I think if you're Mike Vrabel and you're watching that offense and the offensive line, you're probably pretty happy with how today went.
And that's what Mike Vrabel advised us as media members when I asked him on what we should be looking for. He said, why don't you look for this stuff, you idiots?
You know, to me, it's critical at the line of scrimmage, right? Just being able to make contact. There's going to be a stalemate. There's two professional players lined up across from each other. Who can re-engage? Who can reset their feet? Maybe get a little extra movement. You know, how do we play on? Do we stay on our feet? Can we practice like this and stay on our feet? We got a bunch of guys falling on the ground. I'd rather not see that. I just don't think that good teams end up practicing that way. And again, just the urgency in which we move around practice, that we're in and out of the huddle, the players are running on and off the field. Those are all things that I think are critical. I think that translate to the field, to the game, right? Where, you know, you're not standing 10 yards behind the ball, you're coming from the sideline, and we're communicating the personnel, and the quarterback has to echo that. Those are the types of things right now that we're trying to build.
Before we go any further, I want to let you know it's piping hot right now. This is a very hot table. My calves are going up in flames as we speak, but we're happy to have this spot at the Optum Field Lounge here inside Gillette Stadium. Phil Perry alongside once again. Phil, how did that trench work look, especially in the 11-on-11s? We're going to get to some one-on-one intel for you in a second.
Yeah, in the 11-on-11s, again, I thought the offensive line and some players that maybe we don't talk about a lot. We definitely talk about Will Campbell, and I thought he had a nice day in the 11-on-11s. I saw him on a couple different occasions blocking down on Milton Williams and really creating some space and allowing, at one point, Ramondre Stevenson to just run right off his keister thumb right into the end zone. So that's what you're looking for from the number 4 overall pick. But even guys like Jared Wilson, I thought, created some room in the run game. And Cole Strange. We never talk about Cole Strange. Cole Strange was an offseason award winner for the New England Patriots. He's really consistently the first left guard on the field in front of Drake Maye, and I thought he moved well today. I saw him pulling on a couple different occasions, some power plays, pulling guard, getting around the edge and moving up to the linebacker level and moving people there. To me, I know he had a devastating knee injury a couple of years ago, but he was moving well, and I think that's his job to lose at left guard there.
Yeah, said it before, I'll say it again. Not a bad player, just an unlucky one so far. Those stalemates that you saw on the offensive line, the down block on Williams, he also performed well, did Will Campbell, against Keon White on some of those running plays. But on the one-on-ones, his first effort to go full contact in the National Football League, he was matched up against the superhero Keon White. How'd it go?
It is interesting
like a superhero.
How we think of Keon White, because there's so much ability in that body of his, and yet we just haven't seen it translate onto the field in regular season action, at least on a consistent basis. So to me, he's a good, not great player yet, but in terms of Will Campbell's performance against him, and just so interesting that we played that Mike Vrabel sound about staying on your feet, because Will Campbell was on the ground twice in the span of about 8 minutes early in the practice. Give him credit, steps right up, first rep of the day against Keon White. It's a run blocking period, and they're just sort of engaged. They're kind of engaged like this, and they're moving sideways. And Keon White, at the end of the drill, just gets underneath him and through Will Campbell. He ended up rolling around on the ground. Couple minutes later, no, we wouldn't expect you to either. We need 2 people for this show. Can't be a one-man show. In the one-on-one pass protection drill, Keon White, bull rush, both arms fully extended, using real power. Again, he's a physically gifted guy against Will Campbell. He must have felt Campbell sort of leaning on him a little bit to sort of counteract that power move. And Keon White, as a result, as a counter, just rips Will Campbell towards him and sent Will Campbell stumbling in the wrong direction, and Keon White breezed past him into the backfield. So sort of because it's their first padded practice, Tom, and because Keon White is a physically talented young man, those to me qualified as welcome to the NFL types of moments for Will Campbell, the number 4 overall pick.
See what he does with that intel as we go forward this week with more padded practice and the one-on-ones. For those of you who are only listening to this podcast, meanwhile, you should be advised that Phil was able to spray down his biceps and arms prior, and he's wearing a medium shirt, and he's got big old glistening forearms and biceps, which are, I'll be candid, distracting for his co-host.
Can't help it. I'm sorry.
How did Drake Maye look in limited action in terms of a thrower? Now, let me interject. I think that with that Vrabel sound that you heard, he wants to see crispness. He wants to see urgency. He doesn't want to see downtime. In and out of the huddle, you go from period to period. Position groupings are moving quickly. We're seeing all that, and I think some of that is traceable. Not like Jacoby Brissett couldn't do it or Mac Jones couldn't do it, but it moves well. Drake Maye is not sticking out like a sore thumb in terms of getting the operation well aligned. But how did he look as a thrower and engineer of the offense?
I thought he looked fine. He didn't really have an opportunity to show off the arm, Tom, but I thought the ball was out relatively quickly when it needed to be. You know, there was one play in particular where he found Hunter Henry on a screen. Again, not the most difficult throw in the world, but there was some pressure on him. He sort of moving back, had to float it to his tight end. But it was timed up in such a way that his blockers were allowed to get to where they needed to in front of Henry, and he ends up running that one in for a score. So that, to me, was an impressive throw. We saw him throw a touchdown to Jalen Polk, of all people, in the back of the end zone, wide open Jalen Polk. Saturday, for me, was really the day where he got a chance to show off the arm, a couple scramble drill touchdown throws, things of that nature. Today was more about the operation and the run game because the pads were on.
Yeah, no pads on Saturday, but they did attempt a number of, I would get, high leverage would be one way of putting it, but it's not that accurate, so I apologize to everybody. How about they pushed it down the field a little bit more?
Yes.
More in the 15 to 25-yard range. So Maye went 8 for 17 by Phil's count on the 11 on 11. Again, non-padded practices, but a lot of those throws were into some levels of coverage. They were lower percentage throws. He looked good. There were a lot of fun plays to watch in that practice. And the scramble throw that Phil was talking about, Maye talked about continuing to be a passer. Take us through that play, a touchdown to Demario Douglas.
Yeah, it was interesting. When we spoke to him, I think it was on Friday, Drake Maye, one thing that he is trying to improve upon this year, and we've heard Mike Vrabel talk to him about, I think it's in the Forged in Foxborough series, the first episode, the first scene, quote unquote, is a scramble by Drake Maye out of bounds along the sideline. But when he comes back, Vrabel says, nice job remaining a passer, because he could see that his eye, as he was moving away from pressure and out of the pocket, he could see that the quarterback's eyes were down the field, and he was trying to find somebody deep down the field. Maye spoke about that the other day and said, I think I left some plays on the field. I left some guys open deep down the field last year because he was too focused on running the football. This play to Pop Douglas, he scrambles away from pressure to his right, eyes down the field, off one foot, on the move, just flick of the wrist. The throw probably traveled at 45-ish or so yards in the air down the field and hit Pop Douglas in stride for a touchdown. So, for Tom, an offense that's not loaded with explosive weaponry, right, just in terms of their individual physical skill sets, if they can create some explosive plays because he can scramble around and buy those guys time, even if it's just once a week, that could really change outcomes for them.
How does Drake Maye make the collection of talent around him better by the things that he does and that he has in his tool belt? Boy, it's hot out here.
Mentioned that.
We're on wideouts right now a little bit, and you opined that when you went through your numbers so far for receptions that Demario Douglas has been, I wouldn't say by far, but he's been the most productive of the wide receivers when Drake Maye is targeting guys. What else are you finding between he, Diggs, Bourne, Kyle Williams?
Yeah, so Diggs has been the most targeted wideout by Drake Maye. And through Saturday's practice, he had caught 6 of 10 competitive targets from Drake Maye. Pop Douglas, I believe, was either 7 or 8 of 9 and the competitive targets that he has seen. And so, this gets back to, what are our expectations for Diggs? What will the hierarchy be within that room? So far, through 5 practices, I would say that Pop Douglas has been their best wide receiver. It doesn't mean Diggs won't be good, can't be good, and won't be their best guy by the time the season rolls around. He's still, 9 months removed from that ACL injury?
Yep.
But I just am a believer in Douglas's ability to get open, and I think with a year between them under their belts together, Maye and Douglas, you're going to see a chemistry that allows that to be a more productive tandem. And add Josh McDaniels to that mix, Tom. We know what he's done with slot receivers in the past. I think Douglas could end up having a really productive year, to the point where he's not just like the most productive guy with 650 yards receiving or whatever it is in a bad receiving room. I think there's a chance by the end of this year we're looking at him and saying this is one of the best 10 slot receivers in the league.
Said it before, said it again. He should see the ball about 110 times. I'm not saying 110 catches, but he should be targeted or handed the ball about 110 times in any offense with his set of skills. Meanwhile, one guy who just won't go away, Kayshon Boutte. He's out there with the ones early on, virtually every single practice. He catches what's thrown to him. He's a bigger guy. Talked about that today with the media. So he's not going to be water bugging around when he gets up on a corner. He's going to get right into his move, and he's really able to be effective with that. He beat Christian Gonzalez twice in one-on-ones in the red zone. Phil mentioned that he might have had a drop as well in there. Your loyal reporter wasn't watching when that happened. However, it may have happened indeed. We'll get to Christian Gonzalez day in just one second, but Boutte, I'm not saying he's just there, but he's hard to overlook with the number of reps that he gets.
They it seems like, want him to succeed. He's getting so much work with Drake Maye. I mean, he's consistently, if not always, consistently one of the top receivers out there. When they go 11 personnel, 1 tight end, 1 back, 3 receivers, it is often Stephon Diggs, Pop Douglas, and Kayshon Boutte. And so, in a room where it looks like it could be a little bit condensed in terms of, what your expectations might be after Diggs and Douglas, I think there's a group of 3 receivers there, Tom, in Kyle Williams, Kayshon Boutte, and Kendrick Bourne, that I'm kind of expecting similar production from, but it feels like the team is expecting Boutte to clearly be the best or the most reliable or the most productive of that trio. Does that
It does. It makes
jive with what you're seeing?
Yeah, because he's a guy who had 40-plus catches last year on a horrible offense. He was available downfield. He was available underneath. We're going to remember the drop that he had that resulted in a pick. But generally speaking, he doesn't drop the ball. His body control is fantastic. What I wanted to ask him and didn't really get a way to phrase it, squeeze it in, but how have you evolved as a person who prepares to play football on a daily basis in your time with the Patriots? How different are you now than you were the first 2 years? Because I would imagine that each season it is ratcheting up in terms of professionalism requested of these guys. So he has to show that.
He does, and from what I've heard from people in the building here is he has matured. Is he the most mature person on the roster? He's still probably not there yet, but he has certainly since he was a rookie. It's also interesting to me, Tom, when we talk about this receiver group, he's younger than Jalen Polk and he's younger than Javon Baker. He came into the league a year earlier than both of those guys. But if you're talking about upside, and this is, I think, part of the conversation when it comes to, maybe ultimately deciding between who gets a roster spot between Boutte and Bourne, Boutte to me is the upside play. And if you're hoping to get something out of a group of receivers that looks like a lot of 2s and 3s right now, and you still think there's room for Boutte to grow, there's probably not as much of that for Kendrick Bourne.
That's a great point, and it's going to have to be a comfort level between Josh McDaniels, Drake Maye, especially McDaniels, who has background with Bourne, and Drake Maye, who now has more background with Boutte necessarily than Bourne, or probably equal, but Bourne was hurt for a period of time last year. Let's get to the downcast news of the day, and that would be Christian Gonzalez leaving the field with a lower leg injury. Additionally, we haven't seen Carlton Davis except for peekaboo action so far. He's their free agent signee from the Detroit Lions. He's making an awful lot of money, $20 million a year, I believe, is the contract, which is a good chunk.
You say that in my direction like I would know off the top of my head, and I should, but I don't. It feels high.
It does feel high.
I think it's a tick lower than that, but it's a lot either way.
Hey, A-Bomb, any chance you could do me a solid and just Google the Carlton Davis contract? Because I just said he's making $20 million a year. And Phil said, feels high. And I after I said it, it does feel high. I know he's making a lot. That's Adam Hart. Glenn Gleason's behind the camera, and Moose, Bill Messina. He's overseeing all the operations.
3 for 54.
We got
3 for 54.
Okay.
34.5 guaranteed. 18. So
All right.
20, just pretty close. Pretty close.
So
Base at 5 this year.
base of 5. So he's going to be, and if he's getting 34 as a guarantee, he's getting 34. So his cap, I'm not going to get into that stuff. Be that as it may, he hasn't been out there. Now Christian Gonzalez has a leg injury. We're looking at 2 good corners, or better than good corners, who ideally will be out there being all their long and angular selves covering receivers. And it's July, but now neither one's out there.
Yeah, and especially for a team, Tom, that we think will be driven by its defense if they're going to contend in any way, shape, or form this year. And those 2 guys should be the engine of that side of the ball, in my opinion. That they should be what makes it go. They should be really lockdown types of players in a man-to-man heavy scheme that allows for the pass rush to get home because they're covering so well that it forces quarterbacks to hold on to the football, maybe creating turnovers. You know, man-to-man, sometimes it's tough. Like, your back's not always to the player, it's often to the quarterback.
Yes.
And so maybe a little bit harder to, to actually get a turnover in that sort of scenario. This table's hot, kids, really hot. Everybody be safe out there. Don't touch your ovens at home, and beware of plastic tables that have been left out in the sun for hours on end. I just would say this: if it's soft tissue for both of these guys, and I don't know that with Carlton Davis. Today it looked like soft tissue, looked like maybe he was grabbing at his hamstring. Gonzalez was, as he walked off the field. Like, how much time are you willing to give them off in the summer just so that they're good? Because I think they're that important, just so that they're good for week 1 of the regular season. Would you give them, like, the Randy Moss treatment and just say, you know what, take a month? Because I don't want you to re-aggravate it and have it be an issue again in mid-September and then again in December. Like, we want you to just be fully healthy, so set it all the way back to 100%. And there's no reason to push it this time of year because we know what you are.
Well, the problem is I would do it with Gonzalez because you do know what he is, and he's been on this team, and he's an all-pro player. Carlton Davis is a little bit more of an X factor and needs to get used to some of the players around him, even though there's a lot of new personnel in the defense, and he's been with Terrell Williams. I think the Patriots, as an organization, would say, well, we want to see what we bought here. We'd like to watch it, in action, get it out of the driveway, tool it around town. Interesting development on specialty teams today. Yes, I said specialty teams. They didn't do any kickoffs. They did do some field goals. But young Parker Romo was the only one place kicking today. No.
Andy Borregales.
Why?
Good question. Sometimes this happens. Borregales was out there on the field, so I don't know if I don't think he's dealing with anything physical, although we'll see, I guess. Sometimes they'll have one kicker. He was not good on Saturday. I had him as 2 for 4 on Saturday, and he talked after the practice about, maybe blaming the wind for one of his misses.
Vicious July winds of Foxborough. Fortunately, by December, it'll be much more clement.
Pretty nice day out there on Saturday. Like, I'm not saying there was no wind. They do play outdoors here, so that's going to have to be a factor that he deals with on occasion here in Foxborough, Massachusetts. But it wasn't a great day for Borregales on Saturday. I wonder if tomorrow, maybe, Tom, if they do more kicking, if he gets all the kicks tomorrow. But Parker Romo, to me, looked okay. Tough angle from where we're at, but all 5 of his kicks looked to be at least very close, if not good. And so I think that's a real competition there, even though they drafted one guy, and he should win it based on that. He should win it, but they have this Parker Romo, and he's not going away.
Just routinely taking a flamethrower to draft picks. Javon Baker, Jalen Polk, Chad Ryland, Justin Rohrwasser. Come on. I should ask how the long snapper's doing so far, but I don't know his name.
He looks fine. Julian Ashby.
I know Ashby. Yep. Allen's kid. Glenn, you got that one right, Allen Ashby. former Blue Jays catcher. Finally, let's wrap it up with a little running back rotation conversation.
Yeah.
And Antonio Gibson featured.
He was. I was surprised at just how much run he got. Ramondre Stevenson got the first carry of the day in 11-on-11s, and then soon thereafter caught a little check down from Drake Maye. But Antonio Gibson was out there quite a bit. Both players were. It was actually interesting to me, Tom. We saw all three running backs, Stevenson, Gibson, and Henderson, working with Drake Maye. This is, again, I'm going to say it. I said it once, say it many times. This is going to be a fantasy football player's worst nightmare. This backfield is going to be hard to gauge in terms of who's getting what and when, in my opinion, because even Travion Henderson, while to me he seems like the most third downy of the three backs, he was out there today. It was a run-heavy day. Getting a decent amount of work. He did fumble a handoff from Josh Dobbs, which I think might have been on him. Hard to tell, but so a little bit of a rookie moment there. But all three of these guys getting work with Drake Maye, and I think Josh McDaniels is going to want to rotate.
Speaking of rookies, Jared Wilson working in behind Cole Strange and behind Garrett Bradbury, both along the offensive line. Not the first guy out there, but he gets in there early.
Fumbled a snap again today. 2 fumbled snaps for Jared Wilson. You're going to see stock up, stock down on NBCSportsBoston.com very soon. He's in the stock down category today, Jared Wilson.
Way to come over the top with some negativity. What happened, guy?
The people have important questions.
Oh, nice.
A-bomb, checking in.
Courtney wants to know, did our guy use the bathroom before this? And then Michael Brykov wants to know, just got here, Tom used the restroom yet? So
I did. I was in the restroom, I would say, at about 2:42. Came out, changed my shirt. I said, Phil, we should go down. I don't have an IFB. He said, that shouldn't be a big deal. I said, it might be a big deal. He said, did you use the restroom? I said, I just came out. So I'm light as a feather right now, to be honest.
Tommy Waters.
What? I'll be candid. This is so hot right now, I don't think I could use any liquid going anyplace else other than out my pores. Thanks for joining us.